Good evening, councillors, members and officers. I'm Councillor Stuart Jeffrey, Leader of the Council, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting of the Cabinet on this cold and frosty evening. It's not frosty. Let's hope it doesn't get that way. May I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the Council, but if anyone else is intending to record these proceedings, can you please let me know now? I ask this question not to stop you, but to merely ensure that the members of public in the room know that this is taking place. Item 1, I have apologies from Councillor Summerskill. I don't think there's anybody else missing. Item 2, there are 3 urgent updates this evening. One is a summary of the feedback received from Overview and Scrutiny Committee and the Policy Advisory Committees. Appendix 2 for item 21, the Asset Management Plan, which was marked the register of the plan, which was marked to follow, and a reference from Council on local government reorganisation, which I will propose to take as part of item 17, the LGR submission. Is this agreed? Lovely. Item 3, are there any visiting members? Come and speak to us.
Councillor Russell for items 17, 18 and 23.
Councillor Mike Thompson for items 18 and 19. Thank you.
Councillor Cleese at item 19.
Maureen, was that 18 and 19? Just 19. Thank you. Item 4 is disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosures? Nope. Good. Item 5, are there any disclosures of lobbying? Nope. Item 6, I move that all items be taken in public unless any Cabinet member wishes to refer to the information contained within item 4, the exempt appendix to item 23, around the Medway Street pay and display car park. Is that agreed? Lovely. Item 7, I move that the minutes of the meeting held on 22nd of October 25 be approved as correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Item 8, there are no petitions. Item 9, there are no questions from local residents. Item 10, there are no questions from members. Item 11, there are no matters referred to the Cabinet by another committee for reconsideration. Item 12, there are no issues arising from overview and scrutiny. Item 13, there are no matters referred to the Cabinet by any other committee. Item 14, there are no matters referred as a serious service failure or nuisance. Item 15, there are no written representations from members of the Council. Item 16, Cabinet Forward Plan. Do any members have any comments on the forward plan? Everybody seems happy. Is that noted? Good. On to item 17. A new topic for us all. I can. The enthusiasm is palpable, guys and ladies. Right. Where to start? So obviously, we discussed this at length on Monday. hang on a second. We haven't got anyone. Claudine, you wanted to talk on this, didn't you? Yeah, okay. So I wasn't going to do a particularly big introduction. Do you want to come and talk now? Speak first, and then I'll put my points across, because mine are just points rather than introductory points. But just to say, obviously, this is following the meeting of the full council on Monday, where we had a good debate and a vote to refer to a cabinet, which I made clear at the I would take as a vote for or against the proposal of 3A, and there were 27 votes in favour and 3 against, with 10 abstentions. So we got a good feedback from the full council, and a good number of clear points were raised, all of which were really well received, and I think, yeah, I'll leave it there and I'll say a bit more in a second. Councillor Russell, over to you.
Thank you. I'm really only coming to talk to this tonight because didn't make Monday because of horse emergency. Big animals, very fragile. Right. So LGR, obviously, when this all started, we really wanted the strategic layer. I still think that's would have been the best thing for us. Not particularly the mayor as a figurehead, but really more importantly, it would have unlocked a lot of devolution, 30-year investment funds. I think also really importantly, we could have spatially planned over a larger area, which would have been very helpful. Without this, I question whether we are just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, but time will tell. I think there will be some nice to haves. It would be nice to have planning and highways in the same room. It'd be nice to have adult social care and housing in the same room. And it'd be extremely nice for our residents to have one point of contact for anything that they want a councillor for. I'm worried the disaggregation costs that are going to be forecast will be higher. They could be higher, and what true benefit would that be for? Obviously, we're not making the decision. We're just putting forward the proposals. It will ultimately be MHCLG and Labour that will pick whatever arrangement suits MHCLG and Labour. So we've gone forward on the West Kent boundaries, and I can see how that aligns with other boundaries, such as health care boundaries. But I don't think, obviously, we'll be allowed to sail off into the sunset as West Kent without some arrangements to look after East Kent, which would be a very impoverished neighbour of ours. With regard to the identity thing, I think we're very close to Tunbridge and Malling. I can see identity with Tunbridge Wells. I really do fail to see much identity alignment with Sevenoaks. I think they're quite different, London Borough type territory, so that's my worry there. And obviously my county division is in Tunbridge Wells, and I'm already hearing different councillors saying it's great that Maidstone's coming because that's where all the houses can go. So I think, there are clear different agendas going forward. Personally, I was a bit saddened through the whole process that the 2 unitary option didn't get a greater buy-in amongst leaders from the start, because I was thinking that would be the best combination between cost, benefit and services at scale, etc. But obviously that got put to the side a way off. So I think based on everything, option 3 seems to be the best choice, West Kent Unitary. But I think if I'd have had the vote on Monday with all the questions still in my mind, I would have abstained. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Devolution is the prize here. Otherwise, we're doing it for fairly low-level reasons. Although there are some good points that you've absolutely raised around the public sector alignment and having housing and highways in the same council is good. And you're absolutely right to point out the risk around housing. That was in terms of strategic allocations. That was absolutely a key point on Monday. Members, Councillor English.
As I said on Monday, we wouldn't necessarily choose to be quite where we are, but this process has never been entirely or even largely within our own control. We can just manage it and as best we can. There is no perfect solution. The proposals all have, well, not all of them, but some of the proposals have merits which are balanced against other proposals that have merits and demerits. On balance, have taken the view, and I continue to take the view, that 3A is the least worst option available to the council. It doesn't necessarily mean that when we make the submission, His Majesty's government will agree with us, but we can only make the best case we can. I agree with Councillor Russell that we desperately need a strategic level of local government back in this county. We have suffered tremendously from the half-baked attempts to compensate for the lack of a strategic planning level. We need proper coordination of transport. We need devolution of other functions, particularly economic-related functions from the government, to give local authorities more levers to control our own destiny. Let's hope that if we press on with local government reorganisation, that does emerge, because if it doesn't, the government has only carried out a partial and very short-term reform and have failed to take the opportunity which is there. This country is the most over-centralised in Europe, and it's about, we have for decades suffered the economic and social and cultural consequences of being the most over-centralised country in Europe, and it's about time we stop that.
Thank you, Councillor English. The motion on the papers is that we note the feedback. I'll come to you in a second, Councillor Thompson. That the business case for the three insurances, 3A, is approved for submission, and the leader sends a letter alongside the submission, and that delegated authority is given to us to make any final amendments. Before I come to Councillor Thompson, is anyone going to second that? Thank you, Clive. Stephen.
Chair. Interesting phrase Councillor Russell used. We've been using the same notes, namely rearranging deck chairs on Titanic. I'll come to that in a moment. It was put to us recently in the debate that we had. Does this decision matter? Will the government listen to us anyway? It doesn't matter what we say, and so forth. And I hear some of the realism in that. And we've been given a map, we've been given a choice, an input to a choice of a map, of a variety of maps, and indeed it's a pertinent exercise, and I would like to repeat my gratitude to officers who, from the cabinet table I have seen, have put in enormous effort into discharging their duty in tackling the 6 criteria and all of the associated matters to do with that. And I understand from testimony from councils and councillors across the county that the leadership exercised by Maidstone Borough, by its officers as well as its leadership, has been noted and appreciated. So the exercise has been worthwhile, it has been invested in, and I would like to signal my appreciation for that. I'm sure that's not a difficult thing for us to note. So yes, the activity certainly did matter in that case, and people have been listening, people have certainly been working very hard. That technical level of engagement has been really, really important. Nevertheless, the choice of a map is only part of the decision of the democratic transition from where we are to where it is that we're going to go. I think we all agree that we need better sorts of councils, but we must have better sorts of councils, not just different ones. And I note in my short involvement in the Integrated Care Partnership, where this council works in coordination with KCC, that lack of leadership quickly has effects where vaccination programs and other fundamental inputs to public health and well-being of the community across the county are affected when people lose vision and a sense of what is really important and what their role and example ought to be. In the Kent and Medway Economic Partnership, on which I also have the privilege of representing the wider area in this council, the question of economic development is clearly floundering. It wasn't in great shape when I first joined the group. We made early gains in speaking up for increasing the representation for food and farming, our basic ability to feed ourselves as part of the industry of the county. And indeed, Councillor Jeffrey, you played a key part in doing that. That continued to be a feature of the last meeting. So we have been listened to and we have made a difference. It was also a feature of the last meeting that we had consultants who came, Metro Dynamics came to produce consultancy information about the government's 8 strands of their industrial strategy. And that piece of work was exposed by many people in the meeting who simply said words to the effect of, "You don't know Kent well enough." So Councillor English already signalled that the economic development strategy is going to be of key importance. The map does not give us that. And then there is the wider matter. Councillor Rodwell next to me is going to speak about nature and environment issues later. I won't steal her thunder at this point, but the economic model that we use needs to support, not cut across, our ability to care for our environment and for ourselves. There's a reason that we use the rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic idiom so frequently. It is because the boat was charging towards disaster. And you do rearrange deck chairs in order to clear the decks for action, as it were. That is not a pointless activity. So I and others will continue to speak up for making sure that the map is not the only thing that we deal with, that the technical details of the alignment of social care, adult care, housing, NHS issues and so forth, important as they are not the only issues. And I know the leader that you support these motivations, and we'll keep speaking to them. And I, for one, will keep doing so in hope that somebody will listen, and indeed that will include the government. Thank you.
Thank you. It's important that we kind of separate the political direction of any new council from the structures that we're creating, I think. And rest assured, we will be putting the need for devolution as a result of this, making it incredibly clear within the letter. Councillor Wales.
Thank you, Chair. I speak as one who is quite committed to the idea of unitary authorities, perhaps almost uniquely amongst members in this authority, having served in one before serving here. And the clear lines of sight and for residents to get a service fixed is so much better. Even then, we still had TfL grabbing some of our main roads, but apart from that, we had responsibility for all the other roads. And that, all too often, you see people talking about, oh, the council's done this, the council's done that. Why hasn't the council done this? But they don't know which council they're talking about. Whereas if the accountability would be so much greater if we had a unitary authority. The balance has been always, I suspect, of getting one that's big enough to work, but small enough to still be accountable to the residents and not so remote. The bigger All Kent one was obviously hopeless with 250 members and whatever. But I think the best way of preventing any sort of democratic deficit is to get real devolution. A lot of devolution has been talked about, but real devolution of more being done at the level below the unitary authority, and that will be the parishes and the town councils, because then those decisions are being made much closer to the people, but the strategic ones are being done by a unitary authority. I do have to offer, like everybody else has, a thanks to the officers who've worked extremely hard on all this, and I think that needs to go on record here as everywhere else. So, and as well as doing their day jobs and keeping us on track with this as well, it's been a fantastic job. But I think, interestingly, most of the models being talked about as going forward have the 4 West Kent authorities together anyway. whether it's 3A, 4B, or 5, which Gravesham and Medway, or a bit of Medway, and Dartford have gone for. So that seems to be the most sensible one and generally preferred by most of the other authorities in Kent. So I think 3A is the one to go for.
Thank you. And we will note the thanks from the entire Cabinet for the work that the officers have done. I think that's useful. Okay. If there's no more comments, then we'll have a vote on the motion as per the papers. All those in favour? Okay. All those against? And abstentions. That's carried. Thank you. Okay, item 18 is the reference from the pack on the practical right measures for the rights of nature. This was a motion that went to full council, and per the usual process, it was moved on to the pack where there was discussion and referral to Cabinet. The motion calls for some thinking around how we bring the rights of nature into the work that we do. It does not call for acknowledgement of personhood within that. It separates out those two concepts. Visiting members, thank you. Claudine. Yeah. So, Claudine, over to you.
Thank you. I'll be really quick. I know it's called practical measures on rights of nature, but I still can't see in the motion what the practical measures are. And I know that it then says it's going to have a report and it will come back to Cabinet, but I think it needs a bit more work than that. It's going to the Policy Advisory Committee and back to Cabinet, but I think you're just voting on this today without really the detail of what it is. And I said that at the meeting when we had it before at Council, it got referred here. I'm just going to say the same thing again. I think you need milestones, you need what your objectives are, what you're trying to deliver with it, how much this is going to cost. Without any of that, I just don't see how it's a noble idea, but I don't see what it actually is and how it's going to impact everything else. So I wouldn't vote for it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. I think just in terms of general principles on motions, that kind of detail doesn't generally come through. That's where we debate and ask officers to do reports and so forth. Councillor English.
Next Friday. Oh, sorry. Is
Sorry,
another
Councillor Thompson, were you speaking on this one? No. Okay.
Next Friday at East Malling Research Station, there will be the launch of the Kent Natural Recovery Strategy, which Councillor Harwood and Councillor Rodwell at least will be attending. This meeting will be covering a number of very practical measures that are being carried out or suggested to be carried out across Kent. I would anticipate that once we've been to this very important discussion and informed ourselves on a number of the pieces of good work that are being carried out around the county, that we'll be in a much firmer position to fill out the document in the way that has been requested. The full report will be available in due course, along with a forward from a very familiar person.
Thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Thompson, and then Councillor Rodwell.
That's him. So is it him or is it me? Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to add that back in 2024, there was a quite similar motion for the Nature Recovery Declaration, and that Nature Recovery Declaration was kind of held up as best practice, and it is quite detailed actually. However, I suggest that not much, if anything, has changed because of that declaration, and I think that the real challenge here is coming up with something which leaves a lasting legacy, because from the last item, I think we're going into very difficult, uncharted territory. And if there is any way that we can lock in practical protections and make very practical changes, and that may be offloading land to conservation organisations, it may be, but I think we need to do that. We need to proof this council against the potential harm which could occur within a few years with, you know, potentially very significant political change. So I like the practical and the pragmatic element here, and I look forward to this being worked up in a more detailed form, and you're right around process and where we start. It's also worth adding that I've been party to a few county-wide discussions of late, and Maidstone Borough Council is being held up with Wealden and some others as being further ahead than perhaps other local authorities in terms of really thinking about how do we actually stop the rot rather than just pay lip service to it. And so I think we need to maintain that leadership and stay dynamic and be quite radical in what we do, because, as I say, we can't afford to go any further backwards.
Thank you. Councillor Rockwell.
Yeah, echo what Tony is saying. It's more than an ethos, it's more than a vision. It is about practical, it is pragmatic, and it is putting things in motion. I mean, I'm really happy to bring this to the Cabinet because we can begin this body of work, which will bring milestones and objectives and costs to be explored by the officers. And it is rethinking our relationship with the natural world as humans. But it's also, for me, it is a pragmatic approach about how we can actually put it into practice, put the nuts and the bolts on the things that we want to do. And we have very little time, and it is about leaving a legacy. But, you know, we can talk about it, but for me, it's about embedding it and making it something workable. So on that, I propose that a report on the practical measures of the rights of nature be added to the forward plan for March 2026.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel, and thank you for the seconding. Councillor Thompson.
Sorry, I missed you.
Oh, sure,
I was too fast to go in there.
Not at all. Thank you, Chair. So to return briefly to the Titanic, I understand that the boat set sail across the Atlantic and its coal supply was on fire. It would have reached its destination safely with fire in the bunkers. It was assessed as a manageable risk, rightly or wrongly. The decision was made to do that, whereas the assessment of whether there were icebergs in the way was not. I welcome Councillor Russell's challenge. We have to start with a framework for rethinking our relationships, as the paper says, between human beings and the rest of the world, on the basis of which we then work out what our leadership needs to look like, what our risk assessment needs to look like, from which practical and pragmatic decisions then follow. We cannot jump to the last step, pragmatic and practical steps, without changing our thinking, without doing our risk assessing. And there are some things that we are doing. Our impacts on the world are profound, and we will get away with some of them as per the fire in the coal bunkers in the boat. But there are some other things that are long processes I think Councillor Harwood used the phrase stopping the rot. That is a slow, inexorable process with inevitable consequences. Our job as a council is to set the adult leadership for the flighty, naive, ill-thought-through populist agenda in the social and political environment around us. It may or may not be listened to, but it is part of our practical and pragmatic action and leadership as this council. We must speak up, we must rethink, and we must show others how to do that. And I thank Councillor Rodwell and her colleagues for setting that process in motion. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no one else indicating. So are we agreed with the proposal from Councillor Rodwell that we add this to the forward plan? Excellent, thank you. Item 19 is a reference from full council via the PAC in the same process way as before. This is on community cohesion. It was a motion originally from Councillors Harper and Millam, and reflects clearly some of the concerns that they wish us to look at. Councillor Cleater, I think you wanted to speak on this. Can I just check whether one of the many Councillor Thompson sitting over there, were you also indicating to speak on this one? You don't? I can't hear you. Yes or no? Don't? Okay, brilliant. Councillor Cleater.
Thank you, Lisa. Obviously, the motion from full council was referred to the Housing Community Cohesion Pack for discussion. We had a varied debate there. Some enlightening comments, had to get people back on track about what it was really about, which was the points which was to do all it can to present the facts around migration, current and recent, and in my ward particularly. You know, we've had people say, you're giving them cars. Who's giving who cars? I mean, you know, this is the realms of what certain people are going round saying. Address the concerns of minority cultures in a hostile environment. I've lived abroad. It was quite hostile where I lived. It's not comfortable. It's not nice. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And promote cultural awareness and celebrate diversity. They were the 3 points we were asked to do. But there is a climate around here that, if not challenged, and I would like to say, well done Kent Police with your post on the paedophiles who were given 100 years, because that clearly, without any fanfare, challenged the rhetoric around. And one of the things we need to understand, while people are demonising people over here, actually other stuff is going on that people do not see as a risk because they're too busy looking at people over here. And I think, again, we have had the issue with David Garrick, again, rearrested, recharged over events that went on there. And for women especially, I've sat in this council meeting now and heard presentations at full council and other meetings from Mr. Turner, who is disrespectful to the chair, who is disrespectful to officers, and actually is borderline threatening elected members. This is not who we are. This is not what we do. And we need to challenge every step of the way. All it takes for evil to succeed is good men and women to do nothing. Yes, I've included women in that quote, by the way, because we have to stand up. We're not, fly what flag you like. Scotland will be awash with flags at the moment after last night. But it's what those flags mean. And if you come from Northern Ireland, or if you come from Liverpool like I do, it marks out territory. It means you're not welcome here. if you're a certain religion or a certain ethnicity. So we're doing good work. We need to shout it louder. We need to just carry on doing what we're doing, but publicise it more. And I think we will get some, well, not to the women, but there will be surprises for many people once we start doing this work on Vogue, on who the perpetrators are, where they come from, and the coercive behaviour. So I would urge you to work on this. We owe it. We're going to get brickbats whatever we do. And actually, it's time to stand up and be counted. And well done to all the officers who are doing the work on this, because it's a really important piece of work. And we mustn't get diverted on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keeser. Well said. Any comments from the Cabinet? Councillor Wales.
From time immemorial, this country has been made up of a wave of people from abroad. Right from the earliest times in history, the Angles, the Saxons, the Jutes, everybody passing through as what's made up this country. And people have continued to do that and continue to contribute to this country. People come here because they want a better life, they want to contribute to society, they want to be able to work, pay their taxes, and live in a civilized society without the fear of threat of war. We used to be able to tolerate that. And it rather grieves me to see that we can't do it anymore. It has been, the whole lid has been lifted off this Pandora's box of nastiness, of hostility, of people who are different. Why shouldn't children wear ear defenders in school if they're neurodivergent? Why should you make fun of people who look different or act differently or who are different? It's this whole thing of intolerance. We used to be confident enough as a country not to need to fly our flag everywhere. We knew we were British. People in the country knew they were British. British, not English, I hasten to add. And it's only there as a source of irritant to those who aren't. I can see no other reason for doing it. There's no justification for doing it, because if you were flying the flag in a positive way, you'd be flying it for a purpose that's a positive one. And I think we all need to stand up. Why are we spending all this time talking about 34,000 immigrants or whatever it is when there are 2 million children without a roof over their head, or 4 million people using food banks? They're the people we should be talking about, and diverting attention to a very, very small minority. And it's not illegal to seek asylum. They're not illegal immigrants. They are immigrants that become illegal if they overstay and then disappear. But those are an even smaller handful. And I think it's shocking, it's malicious, and it's evil.
Thank you, Councillor Wales. I think you've certainly echoed my thoughts entirely. Councillor English.
It is not a new tactic for organisations of a certain politics to scapegoat others. It has happened in many countries. You see it now in the United States. You see it now in parts of Britain. I remember a few years ago when the Islamic community in Maidstone put in a perfectly reasonable application for a mosque. An organisation put out letters, fake letters, purporting to come from the Borough Council Planning Department in order to whip up objections to what was called a mega mosque. It's actually slightly smaller than the one that was there before. So disinformation is not new, and the motivation for it comes from organisations that primarily wish to ensure that governments do not address poverty, exclusion, and discrimination, because as long as you can blame everything that goes wrong on a community, then one doesn't have to do anything to provide affordable housing, improve medical services, do something about social care issues. It's a lovely diversionary tactic for billionaires and hedge fund proprietors to donate money to scapegoat people, because then they don't have to worry about governments raising taxes to actually provide decent public services. However, I would say that our borough officers had already started some work on the community cohesion project before this motion went to council. I'm not saying the motion was a waste of time, I don't think it was. However, we had already started work, and I think it's important that we show that we go through with that and actually come forward with practical measures, because to actually demonstrate that the vast majority of people in Maidstone are actually not, as sometimes is portrayed, jumping up and down with pitchforks, wanting to drive anyone slightly different out of the community. Maidstone is not like that. Most places aren't like that. And to be honest, I think what we do need to do that, but we need to do it in a calm and measured way, because it's quite clear that certain organisations and people would like to provoke a disproportionate reaction, because that's how further traction is gained. So carry on in a measured, calm and practical way is what I think we should be doing. And the officers, and again credit to the officer team, had already started work on that some months ago, and hopefully we will see the fruits of that coming through to this council in very, very reasonable space of time. We don't want to rush it, and we want to get it right, but I don't imagine that it will be long delayed.
Thank you. Yes, your points around othering are very, very true. Personally, I've lived in Maidstone for 25 years and found it incredibly welcoming and inclusive and diverse. I've got Middle Councillor Thompson and then Councillor Harwood Thompson after that.
Sure, I'm very flattered. Thank you, Chair. What is Maidstone Borough Council for in the remaining time that it has in its current status? What is the point of talk? What is the point of thinking? Why does it matter what we say? Surely it should matter about what we do. We are leaders of our community by being in this place, by wearing these lanyards and labels. I note on page 121 of our papers that it educates us about the previous Conservative government's response through the Integrated Community Strategy Green Paper. It points out the current Labour government's commitments to a culture of cohesion. I regret that Liberal Democrats are not explicitly mentioned here, but I do note that several people are talking a lot more about millionaires and billionaires these days. I'm not saying that needs to be a green calling card, but it's nice to know that is being mentioned. Nevertheless, it is the system of embedded finance and power and influence, not simply a small number of people who hold inordinate bank balances, that we need to be aiming at. We have three different parties sitting in our audience here this evening, taking part in our deliberations. We need to be heard and seen, thinking and speaking, and that is all we need to do to have a profound influence. I note that our three new colleagues who joined the council recently began by making a mark by voting against things, and quickly learnt the power of abstaining and keeping quiet and listening. And I say that with objective appreciation. If that is the way to win the argument, by walking lockstep with each other in setting the example that the papers and eloquent speakers have brought this evening, then Maidstone Borough Council does indeed still have significant things to bring to community cohesion in this borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Harwood, then Councillor Rodwell, and then And Councillor Nagy.
Yeah, I'm very aware that we're talking as the Borough Council and what we can do, but I think kind of philosophically the points that have been talked about around, you know, frankly, I don't think there's ever been a golden age where we were all very tolerant and so on. Yeah, I think there are different iterations in different generations. I think what's different now is that perhaps forces whose political agenda will hurt certain section of society are using the race card, because that's what it is, in order to rabble-rouse and get people to vote against their own best interests. And it's quite transparent what's going on, but it's leading to real problems. You know, I just drove along the motorway and there's a banner draped across the M20 bridge saying, "Stop the boats, save our children." And, you know, that's what you see when you're driving past Maidstone, and it's not necessarily what we want to see. However, I do think we need to think about things on a very kind of corporate level. I don't think it is just community safety. I just don't know. I think there's all sorts of things. I think it's quite interesting that the kind of real kind of outburst of English nationalism, where they're using a flag which was introduced by French-speaking Angevin court because it was used in one of the earlier European kind of war crimes in the Middle East. But it just seems a very strange rallying flag. However, I think understanding your history is so important to this. You know, we're in England, Angleland. The Angles came from Schleswig-Holstein. You know, if people just understood a little bit, I mean, if people really wanted local pride, they'd be flying the Kent Horse, they would be flying the Wessex Wyvern, even the English Dragon. To have a flag which was essentially brought in to crush English nationalism is really quite interesting. So I think that we need to think about this through our art strategy, through our history strategy, just everything, and forge a genuine sense of community. And I actually think that, you know, some of the public art and the things we've done for a community which has a lot of new people in our area from London and much further afield, they don't know local history by osmosis. We need to capture that in ways which are novel and are fun and interesting, and you know, I think we're already doing that. I love the fact that when you get off the train in Maidstone, you see our Mantellisaurus, you see the dinosaur there, and so it's a real kind of, people associate the county town with that, as they should, because it's in our coat of arms, and you know, there are dinosaurs because of Maidstone, essentially. And you know, so I think, you know, we should take this in a really positive approach. Yes, there are some dark forces underneath it, but actually there is so much to be positive about. And frankly, when I grew up in Maidstone, but you know, even the skinheads weren't racist. You know, it just didn't really exist in this town in many other ways. I think there are problems where you see sudden changes in the demographic mix, and obviously, you know, people react to things being different and so on. But we just need to ensure that we don't see the separation that we've never really had. And actually, you know, I go through town every day, and you know, all the children coming out from schools, they are mixed, and I think that is good. So I think it's a generational problem in many ways, but we can educate and we can get to a better place.
Absolutely. And your points about flags are interesting. Obviously, in All Saints Church is a coat of arms with the stars and stripes on it, from an ancestor of one of the American presidents, I think. Yeah, quite. Okay, Councillor Rodwell.
I hate that reading this, and it so saddens me to feel that our community could be considered to be a hostile place for minority groups. And my inbox has been steadily people writing to me about not feeling safe. An incident might have happened, but they don't want to report it. And I know that there's been incidents in the hospitals, and it was brought up in our recent cluster meeting, that people have not been feeling safe in the place that they go to work. And I was pleased to see that there has been some engagement with the police going in and having coffee with a cop, I think was one of them, and to build a sense that we can trust to say that this is happening to me, that we shouldn't be too scared to come forward. And on the whole, our community, hearing what Tony's saying, that our community, there are more people that are welcoming and inclusive than those that sow division and hatred. And we're so much more than nylon flags half-mast on lampposts, tattered now and looking really ugly, and they don't mean anything. They just say, this place is not your place. It's not about loving our country. It's about territorial, and it's about sowing division. So I echo that we should be speaking up. We do need to stand up, and we do need to speak with our communities and engage our communities, because our community is so much stronger and more lovely than all the horrible dark things that are starting to manifest around us. So I'm really glad it was a timely motion, and it's time to stand up against it.
Thank you. Councillor Nagy, do you want to come in, as this is your portfolio, and make some suggestions?
I'll read this bit in a minute, but one of the things I've been working with Martin Jens on this week is any councillors who have anyone who comes to them in fear of anything, they will be able to get in touch with Martin Jens in confidence and know that information will be passed on and no names mentioned. I've done it in the past with some great results. Passports being seized just because someone was boasting and someone didn't like the community they was boasting it in. And I feel that if people got a way of reporting it in confidence, then I think we'll have a lot more action being taken in the right places. But that's what councillors will be receiving. Anyone receiving any email or anything they think they want to pass on in confidence, they'll be able to do that to Martin Jens, and he will pass it on to the appropriate people. And I think that's one way of getting into these things where people don't like to report things, but they can do it through their local councillor, which a lot of you will have someone who comes to you with something or other, and you think, oh, could I pass that on? But Martin Jens will be the first port of call on that one. So I thought I'd just mention that as it's in community cohesion. And then I would also say that officers produced a strategy on community cohesion with a report to be added to the forward plan for March 2026. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you for the seconding. It's fine. I know you were going to try and beat me to that one. Okay, so yes, the proposal is that we get a report on the forward plan, a request for a report on the forward plan to come forward in a couple of months' time. I think everyone's had spoken on that, so is that agreed? Fantastic, thank you. Item 20 is the risk update. Councillor Summersgill should be here to do this, but I'll do it on his behalf. It's the regular report, regular quarterly report setting out our corporate risk register. We took a review of corporate risks earlier this year. This report has gone through the CTCES pack, and no significant points arose. We have the corporate risks shown on page 131, and they're broadly unchanged from July. The local government reorganisation risk is still at 20 because we don't think we can mitigate it, and of course it is quite a big risk. So Cabinet is asked to note the risk update. Would anyone like to speak on it? Excellent. So is that report noted? No. Fantastic. Item 21 is the asset management plan. Again, Councillor Summerskill should be here, so I'll do his job while he sips beer in Greece or wherever he's gone. This report has gone through the PAC, and there was significant discussion there. It is good practice to document our asset management plan, particularly given we've got LGR coming up. The report complements the property disposal policy, which we approved a couple of months ago. Key principles are set out in page 150. It serves multiple purposes, such as making sure we have safe operation of our services, making sure we get a commercial return where appropriate, and our property provides benefits to the community. There is obviously interest in our property in the run-up to LGR, and there is an appendix which was a late paper summarising the assets. That was updated from the PAC version, I believe, and I'm pretty certain there's a complete asset register on the Council's website. Overview and scrutiny asked that assets be highlighted to parish councils and residents groups, and I think hopefully we're happy to let officers do that. The recommendations are to adopt the asset management plan and to note that we'll be getting an annual update. Is that seconded by Councillor Thompson? Had his hand up before you, Councillor English, or are you asking to speak as well? Go for it.
Thank you, Chair. I would again like to thank officers and everybody involved in the recent parish conference, which was, I understand, resurrected recently. In particular, to thank Mr. Green for his presentation on asset management, and indeed I'm not sure this is working very well. That might be helpful, please. And I wanted to observe that it's taken me a while to learn the technical vocabulary. I think I understood all of the points that were made in straightforward terms. It occurred to me that not all of the parishes were present, and indeed some of those that were might not have fully understood all of the purpose behind what was said, despite officers' best efforts. So, given Councillor Jeffrey, that you've already mentioned the importance of this with regard to parishes in the LGR moment, I did want just to invite perhaps one or two officers to speak to how it is that we will make sure that all of our parishes do understand what the implications of the asset management plan and the potential for transfer are, and how that's being communicated, so that nobody feels left behind in that matter. And I do apologise if this is slightly tangential to the immediate item. Thank you.
No, that's fine. Mr. Green, do you want to come back on that?
Certainly very happy to respond on that, Councillor Thompson, and this was addressed at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting, and from our point of view we can pick up on that. What we propose to do is to write out to the parishes with a copy of the asset disposal policy, and to alert them to the information that's available. It's then down to them whether they want to take matters further, but we in the property team are geared up now to deal with any requests. And the disposal policy sets out a number of criteria that we would have to go through if there were to be a property disposal. So we'll appraise any proposals that come from parishes, and the disposal, if it makes sense, would come to the CTCS pack and then to Cabinet in due course.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Okay, I can't see anyone else indicating. So the proposal is to adopt the draft asset management plan and to note the annual updates. Is that agreed, members? Agreed, thank you. Good. Item 22 is the Corporate Strategy Year 1 update, action plan update. As we remember, we took this alongside our budget to full council as to let full council know what we were planning on doing this year. We're halfway through the year, and reports on progress have gone to each of the packs based around the topics that the packs cover. It's good to see that 5 actions have been completed, 25 are progressing, only 4 have been slightly delayed, and one has been paused. It is for noting, I think, this report, but I think it's good practice and good transparency to let people know that we're doing what we said 6 months ago, 9 months ago, and to give people the opportunity to see that we actually deliver on stuff as best we can. So, any thoughts on this, members? Second the proposal to note, thank you. Any other comments? No? Okay, so do we note this report? Fantastic, that's noted. Good, I can shut up for a bit now, that's good, because item 23 isn't mine. That will be, Councillor Wales, I think. You're introducing this, and Councillor Russell, you wanted to speak as a visiting member. I didn't note that Councillors Cleater or Thompson, you didn't want to speak on this? No, good. It is just you. So, Councillor Wales.
Thank you, Chair. So this item relates to the proposed part redevelopment of Medway Street car park with the potential to deliver 24 homes and a commercial unit located within close proximity to the town centre and amenities. The proposal would include the relocation of a number of current pay and display spaces to an area of underutilised land immediately adjacent to the existing car parking area in order to maintain the same number of spaces during and after the development works. The report covers the part redevelopment of the pay and display car park on the basis of delivering 24 homes at affordable rent. The appendices show the anticipated phasing of the works in order to deliver the project, as well as the financial performance and various funding sources. The site does not currently have planning permission for anything other than its current use as a car park, so should members be minded to support the project, then the necessary application will be worked up and submitted based on the proposed programme detailed in the report. We have received a number of submissions and discussions at the PAC, and items there can be covered more in the planning process than in the agreement to forward this as a matter of principle. All units will meet NDSS requirements as well as all relevant building regulations and will include greening up measures to the front of Fairmeadow and Medway Street. There will be 7 car parking spaces delivered as part of the scheme to be utilised by the residential and commercial occupants, as the town centre location is considered as highly sustainable. And similarly to other town centre developments, residents will be able to apply for permits to park overnight in the car park. Homes England grant funding will be applied for prior to commencement of the development works to assist in the cost of delivering these units as affordable housing. So this proposed acquisition provides Maidstone Borough Council with a good opportunity to deliver affordable housing units on a site currently in its ownership, whilst maintaining parking revenue with a view to delivering homes for local people, providing high quality living accommodation in a highly sustainable location. So I propose the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wales. Councillor Russell. My memory for names has just disappeared today.
Thank you, Chair. So, Meadow Street car park. So when we were in administration, we asked for the yellow phase to have these car parking spaces put in. So I think to say that you're going on a net non-gain or non-loss of car parking spaces is actually not the basis on which to make this decision, because you could put these yellow car parking spaces in anyway. I think it's a shame to lose car parking spaces in our town centre when we need to keep it thriving for businesses and for entertainment and leisure. And I know that some residents actually use car parking spaces in the overnight period if they can't find anywhere to park on their roads. So I think you actually need to look at this in the round. I'll put the capital costs to one side. I can see that they're covered in the paperwork. You'll forgive me, I don't have the yellow pages, so this is just some quick calculations that I've done. But 24 units at affordable rent, it's £269,021. That's on page 194 of your papers. That's at affordable rent, don't forget. Your parking spaces that you've lost then, the top blue area looks like you're losing 4 at £4,140 a space. You've lost £16,500 there. On the bottom blue area, you've lost 22, again at £4,000 a space. You've lost £91,000 there. As I said, you could have the yellow section added anyway, 30 spaces, that would make you £124,000. So what totals here is very close. You can see you've made on the rent £269,000. I've had to keep the commercial out of it. I don't know what commercial rents are. We'll just go basic. And with the car parking spaces that you've lost £231,000. So we're netting just over £38,000. That's at affordable rent. If you take that down to social rent at 60%, you're losing money. You're losing £38,000 a year revenue. So I think you need to have a look at it in more detail. Maybe that you've got that on the yellow pages. Maybe that you want to continue a war on motorists and you don't value car parking spaces. But I think you need to have a look at it. We don't need to lose these car parking spaces. And also, we need to remember that any property that we build that goes into our portfolio needs maintenance. I haven't even looked at any of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. I'm not sure war on motorists is... Anyway, there were some comments, I think, at either the PAC or overview and scrutiny on overnight parking. I think Councillor Wells has covered those. I'm very happy to second the motion from...
Do you want any advice on any of the points raised by Councillor Russell?
Yes, if you'd like to... No, Mr Cornell, do you want to come back on any of those points?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So, just a couple of things. The site is allocated in the local plan for housing, and it shows sort of total redevelopment, losing all the spaces. So I think the scheme here is a sensible balance. So it maintains 60 pay and display spaces. So the income should be, give or take, more or less the same from parking. Obviously, it then provides a bit of space for perhaps 24 apartments, and obviously they will deliver a net return of around 5%, which is okay once grants taken into account. And what I would say is, if we didn't do this scheme, you know, if everyone's committed to delivering the 1,000 Homes programme, it means this site gets lost, and then we have to go off and buy another site somewhere else off another body, and you know, to buy a site for 24 homes elsewhere would cost £1 million-1.2 million at a minimum. So I think in the round, you know, the business case certainly makes sense, and it's kind of in line with all the other policies, including the new local plan.
Thank you, Mr Cornwall. Yeah, we're not losing any parking spaces. The other ones in that little dip are not being used, not accessible, and frankly, the choice between car parking spaces and homes for people to live in is, I think, quite an easy one. Councillor English.
I represent High Street Ward. I'm perfectly well aware of the pressures, and I'm also the portfolio holder for the area that includes car parking. If there was the negative effect that was being talked about, I would hardly be supporting the proposal. I opposed the Keene Street car park proposal because it would have lost us a lot of revenue and it was a poor quality development. This site is allocated in a local plan, which I did not vote for. So it seems a bit peculiar for an attack to be launched and for a claim to be made of a war on motorists for a scheme that was allocated by the previous administration, which would have lost all the parking spaces on the site. We are not losing parking spaces. We are not at risk of losing revenue. What we are is providing housing. And I remember a council meeting a couple of meetings ago where we were criticised for not producing enough housing to meet the local plan targets. So I'd like to see some level of consistency from the opposition. I would say that in terms of nighttime car parking, one of the things we did, which was definitely not a war on motorists, was to substantially reduce the cost of the nighttime yearly season ticket for people in the town centre who cannot qualify for residents' parking scheme because the road layout does not meet the technical specifications for issuing residents' permits and having parking spaces. So what we have done is not a war on motorists, but a rebalancing of the pricing structure to actually allow people who have to live in the town centre to live in the town centre and still manage to actually have a car so they can get to work in Paddock Wood, say at 5 o'clock in the morning when there's no public transport available because it's closed down. So I think it's a perfectly reasonable thing for this council to balance the need. And that's before we take into account how much money we'd be saving on not having to provide temporary accommodation for the residents of these units. So I'm quite happy to support this proposal because it's part of a balanced approach. Yes, you can pick it in isolation and pick particular aspects, but that is neither fair nor accurate.
Thank you. You make some excellent points. Councillor Harwood.
Just very briefly, I think the intervention we had was a real case of kind of knowing the price of everything and the value of nothing. The type of tenure and the type of accommodation that we are seeking to bring forward on this site is desperately needed and changes lives. And through shuffling a few car parking spaces, we can deliver hope to, frankly, some sections of society who have very little.
Absolutely. Okay, it's been proposed and seconded. We've got a list of, obviously the list of recommendations that are on page 185 have been proposed and seconded. Can't see anyone else indicating, so are we happy to agree that? Great, fantastic, thank you. And that brings us to the end of the meeting, so I declare the meeting closed. Thank you members and officers and visiting members.